The Star Runner drifted silently in the void, its dark hull reflecting the distant starlight. The small cargo ship floated near an uninhabited moon, appearing lifeless, yet somehow maintaining its dignity even in abandonment. Its running lights still blinked steadily, a silent beacon in the endless night of space. Captain Ray stood at the viewport of his salvage ship, his blue scales shimmering under the control room's soft lighting. His long fingers tapped thoughtfully against the control panel as he studied the abandoned vessel. After 20 years of salvage operations, he had never seen a human ship in such good condition just floating in space. "What do you think, Lily?" he asked, turning to his daughter who stood beside him. Like him, she had blue scales, but hers held a pearly sheen that marked her youth. Her eyes, large and silver, were fixed on the ship with unmistakable curiosity. "The power systems are still running," she said, checking her tablet. "That's unusual for an abandoned ship. Most emergency protocols shut down all non-essential systems." She moved closer to the viewport, her tail swishing with excitement. As the crew's junior engineer, this would be her first major salvage operation. The salvage crew's scanner chirped, completing its initial assessment. "No life signs," announced Deck, their security officer. His darker blue scales marked him as being from the southern seas of their homeworld. "But the ship's internal atmosphere is intact. Environmental systems are functioning normally." Ray nodded slowly. "Launch the boarding pods. Standard salvage protocol. Lily, you're with me on the engineering assessment team." The boarding went smoothly. Their magnetic boots clanked against the Star Runner's hull as they made their way to the airlock. The ship's systems recognized their universal access codes, another surprise. Usually, abandoned ships required manual override. Inside, the corridors were clean and well-lit. Emergency lights weren't even active. The main power grid hummed efficiently throughout the ship. The air was fresh, cycling through perfectly maintained filters. "This doesn't feel right," Deck muttered, his hand resting on his stunner. "Abandoned ships don't maintain themselves." Lily was already at a computer terminal, her fingers flying over the interface. The ship's log shows regular maintenance cycles running on automation. "I've never seen programming like this. The human engineers, they built redundancies into redundancies." Ray watched his daughter work, noting how her eyes lit up at each new discovery. She had always been fascinated by human technology, even studying their engineering manuals in her free time. Now she had a chance to see it up close. The engineering bay doors slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a space that made Lily gasp in delight. Unlike the sterile precision of their own ships, this room was a testament to human creativity. Tools were organized in what seemed like chaos, but probably made perfect sense to its former operator. Makeshift repairs showed incredible ingenuity, parts adapted to serve purposes they were never designed for. "Look at this," Lily called out, examining a power coupling. They modified a standard converter to handle twice its rated capacity, but instead of it overheating, they created a heat sink using. "Is that part from a food synthesizer?" Ray joined her, shaking his head in amazement. Humans have always been known for their unusual solutions. That's why their ships are so valuable as salvage. You never know what innovations you'll find. As the rest of the crew began their initial survey, Lily discovered a personal workspace in the corner. A half-drunk cup of something sat on the desk, preserved by the ship's atmospheric systems. Next to it lay a data pad, its screen still displaying diagnostic readings. "They left in a hurry," she said softly, picking up the pad. "But they didn't abandon this ship out of fear or damage. Everything's too organized, too well-maintained. It's like they meant to." She never finished her sentence. A distant clang echoed through the ship, making everyone freeze. Deck's hand returned to his stunner, but Ray raised his hand for calm. "Just the ship settling," he said confidently, though his scales rippled with uncertainty. "Come on, we have work to do. This is going to be a complex operation. We need to catalog everything before we start the salvage." As the crew dispersed to their assigned tasks, None of them noticed the small green light that had begun blinking on the ship's main console. A signal was being received, and somewhere in the void of space, a response was already on its way. The next few hours aboard the Star Runner passed in a blur of activity. While the salvage crew worked methodically through each section, Lily found herself drawn deeper into the mysteries of the ship's logs. She sat cross-legged in the engineering bay, surrounded by holographic displays showing the human captain's records. Ship's log, day 247. The recording played, showing a human male with short brown hair and tired eyes. Engine modifications are holding steady. The coolant bypass isn't pretty, but it works. Had to use parts from the backup coffee maker. Totally worth it for a 15% efficiency boost. Lily paused the recording, her scales flickering with amusement. The human captain, who identified himself as Tom, had a way of describing technical modifications that made them sound like casual conversations. It was so different from her people's rigid technical documentation. "Found anything interesting?" Ray asked, entering the engineering bay. He carried a box of small parts they'd tagged for salvage. The human captain, Tom. "He's fascinating," Lily replied, gesturing to the frozen image. "Look at this modification he made. He took a risk that would have gotten any of our engineers fired, but it worked perfectly. They think so differently from us." Ray set down his box and peered at the technical diagrams. "Different isn't always better, Lily. There's a reason we have safety protocols." "But that's just it," she said, her tail swishing excitedly. "They do have safety protocols. They adapt them. Listen to this." She played another recording. Day 253. Tom's voice filled the room. "Had to choose between following standard procedures and getting these colonists' medicine delivered on time. Created a new emergency protocol instead. If anyone from Engineering Command reviews this, yes, I rewired the auxiliary power through the water recycling system. No, it's not in any manual. Yes, it works. And yes, those kids got their medicine 2 days early." Ray's scales shifted colors thoughtfully. "He sounds proud of breaking the rules." "He's proud of helping people," Lily corrected, scrolling through more logs. "Every modification, every broken protocol. It was always to help someone or improve something." Her fingers flew over the controls as she downloaded more data to her personal device. A loud clang from the cargo bay interrupted them. "Captain." Deck's voice came through the communicator. "We found something unusual in the cargo manifest." In the cargo bay, Deck stood before a sealed container. It's marked as personal effects, but it's still under power. Active stasis field. Ray examined the container's markings. "Leave it sealed. Personal effects aren't part of our salvage rights." He looked pointedly at Lily, who was still clutching the captain's log device. "That includes personal logs, Lily." Her scales flushed a deeper blue with embarrassment. "But there's so much to learn from them. And technically, the logs are ship's property, not personal effects." "Lily," her father's tone carried a warning. "Just let me finish copying the technical data," she pleaded. "The engineering logs only. I promise." Before Ray could respond, the ship's communication system crackled to life. A new log entry was being recorded. "Emergency Protocol 7, a computerized voice announced. Receiving authentication signal. Primary user approaching. Initiating system restart sequence." The lights in the cargo bay flickered, and previously dark screens began to glow. Around them, the Star Runner was waking up. "What's happening?" Deck demanded, his hand moving to his stunner. Lily's eyes widened as she read the incoming data. "Someone's coming. Someone with full access codes." She looked at her father, scales pale with worry. The ship wasn't abandoned. "He's coming back." As if to confirm her words, a small light appeared through the cargo bay viewport. A shuttle was approaching, its running lights bright against the darkness of space. On its hull, clear human lettering matched the Star Runner's registry. The owner was returning, and they were deep in his ship with salvage equipment everywhere. Lily clutched the log device tighter, her mind racing. What would a human captain do when he found aliens stripping his ship? Chaos erupted aboard the Star Runner as the human shuttle drew closer. The salvage crew scrambled to make sense of their situation, their scaled bodies reflecting the flashing warning lights that now fill the corridors. "Everyone stay calm," Captain Ray ordered, though his own scales rippled with concern. "Return to our ship. Now." He activated his comm unit. "Deck, start the emergency departure sequence." But Lily couldn't move. She stood frozen in the engineering bay, staring at the log device in her hands. The human captain's voice still echoed in her mind. All those clever solutions, all that innovation. Now he was returning, and they were thieves. "Lily," her father called. "We need to go." I can't," she stammered, looking around the engineering bay. Parts and tools lay scattered everywhere, their salvage operation obvious. "We made a mistake. We need to fix this." The ship's computer chimed again. Docking sequence initiated, artificial gravity adjusting for approach. The deck vibrated beneath their feet as the shuttle connected with the main airlock. Lily made her decision in an instant. Rather than following her father's orders, she darted deeper into the engineering section, clutching the log device to her chest. She found a maintenance crawl space behind a power conduit and squeezed inside, her scales scraping against the metal walls. Through the small gaps in the maintenance panel, she could see the engineering bay. Most of the crew had already evacuated, but her father remained, looking around frantically. "Lily," he called one last time, his voice heavy with worry. The sound of the airlock cycling echoed through the ship. Ray's scales paled, and with obvious reluctance, he finally rushed from the engineering bay, leaving Lily alone with her fear and guilt. Minutes passed like hours. Lily heard footsteps approaching, lighter than her people's, but steady and confident. A figure appeared in the engineering bay doorway, and Lily had to stifle a gasp. It was him, Tom, the human captain from the logs. He looked exactly like his recordings, though his brown hair was slightly messier. He wore a simple gray flight suit and carried a tool bag over his shoulder. Most surprisingly, he was smiling. "Well," he said to the apparently empty room, "this is interesting." He walked over to his workbench, examining the scattered tools and parts. At least they seemed to appreciate good engineering. Lily watched in confusion as Tom began sorting through the chaos, occasionally chuckling at something he found. He didn't seem angry at all. If anything, he appeared amused. "Computer," he called out, "run a ship status check. Any serious damage from our unexpected guests?" "Negative," the ship's AG responded. "Minor disruption to storage areas. All critical systems functioning normally. One non-human life sign detected in engineering bay." Lily's scales went ice cold. Her ship knew she was here. "Just one?" Tom asked, raising an eyebrow. He looked around the room more carefully now. Must be scared out of their mind, hiding from the big bad human. He set down his tool bag and raised his hands in a peaceful gesture. "You can come out, you know. I'm not going to hurt you. I just need to grab a spare navigation module, and then I'll be on my way." Lily remained frozen in her hiding spot, her heart racing. The human's behavior made no sense. Where was the anger? The threats? The violence that surely should follow finding aliens stripping his ship? "Look," Tom continued, pulling up a chair and sitting down casually. "I can wait, but it might be more comfortable to have a conversation face to face. Besides," he grinned, picking up one of the scattered tools, "I'd love to know what you think of my coolant bypass system." The log shows someone spent quite a bit of time studying it. In her cramped hiding space, Lily felt her scales flush with embarrassment. He knew, somehow, he knew exactly what she had been doing, and he wasn't angry. He wanted to talk about engineering. Lily's scales itched in the confined space of her hiding spot as she watched the human captain. Tom had pulled out a portable computer and was casually reviewing ship logs, occasionally glancing around the engineering bay with an amused expression. "You know," he said to the apparently empty room, "in human culture, it's considered polite to answer when someone's trying to have a conversation." He tapped his screen. "Especially when that someone owns the ship you've been studying so carefully." The gentle humor in his voice finally broke through Lily's fear. Slowly, she pushed open the maintenance panel and emerged from her hiding place, her scales shifting through shades of blue with anxiety. Tom's eyes widened slightly at her appearance, but his smile never faltered. "Well, hello there. I must say, you're much more colorful than our usual stowaways." "I'm not a stowaway," Lily said quickly, then immediately regretted speaking. "I mean, we thought the ship was abandoned." "Abandoned," Tom repeated, looking genuinely surprised. Then understanding dawned on his face. "Ah, right. Different cultural contexts. Let me guess, in your society, a powered-down ship left alone means it's been abandoned." Lily nodded, her scales gradually settling into a less anxious shade. 3 days without contact or crew presence makes a ship eligible for salvage under coalition law. She hesitated, then held out the log device. "I'm sorry we took this. Your engineering solutions are amazing." Tom took the device, chuckling. 3 days? That explains a lot. For humans, abandonment requires a much longer period, especially for privately owned vessels. He set the device down and leaned back in his chair. "I was just getting supplies and replacement parts. Had to leave the ship on minimal power to conserve energy while I was gone." But the maintenance cycles. Lily couldn't help herself. The automated systems were all running. "That's not minimal power." "Of course they were running," Tom replied, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. "Do you know how much work it takes to restart everything from scratch? Better to keep the basic systems ticking over." He paused, studying her curious expression. "You're an engineer, aren't you?" Lily's scales flickered with pride. "Junior engineer on my father's salvage crew. He's probably worried sick about me right now." Her scales darkened with guilt. Tom nodded, reaching for his communication panel. "Well, we should probably let him know you're safe. And maybe explain that this whole thing is just a cultural misunderstanding." He pressed a few buttons, and the ship's external communications activated. "This is Captain Tom of the Star Runner, broadcasting to the salvage vessel. Could we perhaps discuss this situation like reasonable people? I promise no one's in any trouble." There was a long moment of silence before Ray's voice came through, tense but controlled. "This is Captain Ray. My daughter is perfectly safe," Tom interrupted smoothly. "And quite knowledgeable about engineering, I might add. Though we might need to have a discussion about the proper protocols for examining other people's maintenance logs." Lily's scales flushed deep blue with embarrassment, but she noticed Tom winking at her as he spoke. "I propose we start over," Tom continued. "My ship wasn't abandoned. I was just running errands. But since you're here, and since your engineer seems so interested in human technology, maybe we can turn this into a learning opportunity." The silence that followed was shorter this time. "You're not angry about the salvage attempt?" Ray asked cautiously. "Angry?" Tom laughed. "Why waste energy being angry when we could be sharing knowledge instead? Besides," he gestured at the organized chaos of his engineering bay, "anyone who can appreciate my unconventional solutions is worth talking to. Now, how about you dock properly, and we can discuss this over a cup of coffee? I think I still have one working coffee maker that hasn't been cannibalized for parts." An hour later, the engineering bay of the Star Runner had transformed into an impromptu classroom. Tom sat cross-legged on the floor beside an open panel, while Lily knelt next to him, her scales shimmering with excitement as he explained his modifications to the ship's systems. "So you see," Tom said, pointing to a cluster of wires, "when the main power coupling started to fail, I didn't have a replacement. But I did have this food synthesizer's power regulator." He grinned. "The basic principles are the same. Both systems manage energy flow. The synthesizer actually has better heat management, even if it's not designed for engine use. Lily's tail swished back and forth as she examined the modification. But how did you know it wouldn't overload? Our engineering manuals say cross-system adaptations are too risky. Manuals are guidelines, not prison bars, Tom replied, reaching for his coffee cup. The key is understanding the underlying principles. Look here. He pulled up a diagram on his tablet. What do you see? Behind them, Captain Ray watched the exchange with a mixture of concern and fascination. The rest of his crew had returned to the ship, though Deck remained nearby, still uncertain about the situation. The power flow is similar to our shell cooling systems, Lily said suddenly, her scales brightening with realization. We use the same principle to regulate our body temperature. Tom's eyes lit up. Really? Tell me more about that. Your biological systems might inspire some new engineering solutions. As Lily explained the intricacies of blue-scale biology, Tom took detailed notes. The fear and tension from earlier had completely evaporated, replaced by genuine scientific curiosity on both sides. That's brilliant, Tom said when she finished. I never thought about using a cascading coolant system like that. It could solve the efficiency problem in the cargo bay temperature regulators. He turned to Ray. Captain, you've got quite an engineer here. Ray's scales shifted to a proud purple hue. She's always been curious about new technologies, though usually with less traumatic first contacts. Speaking of which, Tom said, standing up and brushing off his flight suit, I should probably explain why I came back. There's a settlement on Proxima B that needs these navigation modules. He patted a small box of parts. Their guidance systems are failing, and they can't land their farming vehicles without them. Lily looked up from the engine diagram she was studying. Is that why you left the ship running? So you could return quickly? Exactly, Tom nodded. Every minute counts when people need help. Though I didn't expect to find such an enthusiastic engineering student when I got back. He paused thoughtfully. You know, I could use some help installing these modules when I deliver them. Your perspective on cooling systems could be valuable. Ray stepped forward, his protective instincts visible in his scale patterns. That's very kind, but we've already caused enough trouble. Trouble? Tom laughed. This is the most interesting supply run I've had in years. Besides, he gestured to the various systems Lily had helped him examine. Your daughter has already spotted 3 potential improvements to my modifications. That kind of talent shouldn't go to waste. Lily looked at her father with pleading eyes. Please, father. This is a chance to learn human engineering firsthand. Think how it could help our future salvage operations. Ray's scales cycled through several colors as he considered. Finally, they settled on a calm blue. Very well. But I'm coming along too. Someone needs to make sure you don't try rebuilding the entire ship. Too late for that, Tom grinned, pointing to where Lily was already sketching out improvements to his power coupling design. I think your daughter's already planning a complete engine overhaul. Lily didn't even look up from her work, her scales glowing with happiness as she immersed herself in the fascinating world of human engineering. The journey to Proxima B took 3 days, during which the Star Runner's engineering bay rarely fell silent. Tom and Lily worked tirelessly, their different approaches to problem-solving creating solutions neither species would have developed alone. See, if we combine your temperature regulation concept with my power management system, Tom explained, sketching on a digital pad, we can increase efficiency by 30%. He pointed to a complex diagram that merged blue-scale biology with human engineering. Lily's scales flickered with excitement as she studied the design. And if we add the shell cooling principle here, she pointed to a junction in the system, we could make it even better. Ray watched from nearby, his scales showing both pride and amazement. In just 3 days, his daughter had learned more about practical engineering than in 3 years of formal training. More importantly, she was teaching their human hosts just as much about blue-scale technology. Captain, Deck called from the doorway. We're approaching Proxima B. The settlement is requesting landing coordinates. Tom looked up from the engineering project. Perfect timing. We've just finished the navigation module upgrades. He turned to Lily. Want to help me with the installation? The settlement turned out to be a small farming community, their landing pads surrounded by vast fields of crops protected by environmental domes. As they descended, Lily pressed against the viewport, her scales shifting to match her excitement at seeing her first human colony. The farming vehicles are over there. Tom pointed to a line of large machines parked near one of the domes. They need precise navigation to avoid damaging the crops. That's why these modules are so important. The welcome they received surprised everyone. Instead of fear at seeing alien visitors, the settlers showed genuine curiosity. Children pointed at Lily's colorful scales, while their parents asked polite questions about blue-scale technology. Your cooling systems could really help our dome temperature regulation, one settler said, examining the diagrams Tom and Lily had created. Would you be willing to share more of your technology? Ray stepped forward, his scales showing diplomatic colors. Perhaps we could arrange a trade agreement. Our salvage operations often find useful parts, and we could prioritize components your settlement needs. And we could share our agricultural techniques, a settler offered. Some of our crops might grow well in blue-scale environments. Tom watched the exchange with satisfaction. You know, he said to Lily as they installed the navigation modules, this is how it should be. Different species working together, sharing knowledge. Everyone benefits. Lily nodded, her scales glowing with happiness. The way you adapted our biological concepts to mechanical systems, nobody on my world would have thought of that. We're too focused on following established procedures. And I would never have considered your temperature regulation principles, Tom replied, tightening the last bolt. Sometimes the best solutions come from unexpected places. As they finished the installation, Ray approached them with news. The Settlement Council has offered us a permanent trade contract. They want regular supply runs and technical consulting. He looked at his daughter. They specifically requested you as their engineering liaison, Lily. Lily's scales cycled through surprised colors. Me? But I'm just a junior engineer who just helped revolutionize their farming vehicle navigation systems, Tom pointed out. You've got a gift for bridging our technologies. Both sides could benefit from that. Ray's scales showed parental pride. I agree, which is why I'm promoting you to chief engineer of our salvage operations. He glanced at Tom. Assuming our human friend is willing to continue sharing his engineering expertise. Are you kidding? Tom grinned. The chance to combine human ingenuity with blue-scale precision. Count me in. Besides, he added, gesturing to their shared engineering projects, I think this is just the beginning of what our species can accomplish together. 6 months after the abandoned ship incident, the Star Runner looked very different. The engine room sparkled with a mix of human and blue-scale technology, each modification marked with both English text and color-coded patterns that Lily had designed for her people. Power output is holding steady at 120% above original specifications, Lily announced, her scales glowing with professional pride as she checked the readings. The combination of human creativity and blue-scale precision had transformed the ship into something entirely new. Tom leaned against the doorway, drinking his morning coffee, and using 30% less fuel, thanks to your cooling system design. The Coalition Engineering Board wants to make it the new standard for all ships in the sector. They didn't believe it was possible at first, Lily said, her scales flickering with amusement. She remembered the board members' shocked expressions when they saw the test results. They kept asking if we were sure about the numbers. The ship's computer chimed, announcing their approach to the next trading stop. What had started as a simple misunderstanding had grown into a thriving business. The Star Runner now served as both a cargo ship and a traveling engineering workshop, bringing supplies and technological innovations to colonies throughout the sector. Your father's on the comm, Tom said, checking his tablet. The salvage crew found another abandoned human ship. He grinned. though this time they waited 2 weeks before investigating. Lily laughed, her scales shimmering with mirth. At least now they know to check if it's actually abandoned. That story about us has spread through the entire salvage fleet. It had indeed become something of a legend. The tale of the alien salvage crew who accidentally stole a ship's logs, only to end up revolutionizing space travel, was now told at every spaceport and trading station. Some called it the perfect example of how misunderstandings could lead to progress. Speaking of progress, Tom said, pulling up a new set of diagrams on the main screen, what do you think about applying your shell cooling principles to atmospheric processors? The farming colonies are struggling with heat distribution in their environmental domes. Lily's scales shifted to her thinking colors as she studied the diagrams. In the past 6 months, she had learned to merge her natural blue scale precision with human-style creative problem-solving. We could adapt the emergency protocols you designed, make the system more flexible, like your coffee maker modifications. Still not going to let me forget about that, are you? Tom chuckled. Never, Lily replied, her scales showing playful colors. It's the perfect example of human engineering. Who else would think of turning a coffee maker into an engine part? The ship's computer interrupted their banter with another announcement. A group of engineering students from both species was waiting at their next stop, eager to learn about the hybrid technology they'd developed. Ready to teach the next generation? Tom asked, finishing his coffee. Lily nodded, her scales now showing confident professional colors. She was no longer the nervous junior engineer who had hidden from a human in a maintenance shaft. Now she was a respected teacher, helping both species learn from each other. You know, she said, making a final adjustment to the power settings, when I first found your log device, I thought I was just stealing technical data. Instead, I found something much more valuable. Oh, Tom raised an eyebrow. And what's that? The understanding that sometimes the best solutions come from unexpected places, Lily replied, her scales glowing warmly. That different ways of thinking aren't just obstacles to overcome, they're opportunities to discover something new. As the Star Runner approached its destination, its hybrid systems humming with perfect efficiency, both human and blue-scale engineering displays glowed in harmony. The ship had become more than just a vessel. It was a symbol of what different species could achieve together, all because one curious alien engineer hadn't been able to resist studying the human captain's maintenance logs. Ready to land? Tom asked, heading for the bridge. Ready, Lily confirmed, her scales bright with anticipation. Let's go show them what's possible when humans and blue scales work together.